Hello, I'm Melanie Palmer, Chief Exec of Solihull Bid. Welcome to the launch of our Emerge Stronger Solihull campaign, designed to help support everyone out there whose lives have been changed by job loss, redundancy and general work-related issues and anxiety on returning to the workplace. To launch the campaign, we're delighted to have with us today Fiona Sanderson, who is an expert in her field, and she's going to be advising on mental health and wellbeing issues in the workplace.
Just to introduce myself, I'm Fiona Sanderson. I am the business owner of Work Wellness Ltd. We are an occupational health and wellness company based in the centre of Solihull, but we do cover sort of the West Midlands in terms of physical presence for clinics, but we also do online consultations and virtual clinics for consultancy across the whole of the UK. Very much a proactive sort of approach to occupational health. A little bit about myself. So I trained as a general nurse at Dudley Road, as it was in Birmingham, sort of early 90s, so showing my age. But I've moved forward through both the NHS and the private sector, working at Birmingham Airport, Manchester Airport, and some of the NHS trusts locally. So it's given me a great opportunity to sort of witness physical and mental health as a whole, to look at the whole person when we approach them and think about the care and support that we offer. But something that we found very much through our workplaces, working with many of our clients over at least the last 5 years, was an increased prevalence around mental health in the workplace. Historically, we would see a lot of physical referrals for sickness absence, but I'd say at least 60% of those were turning more towards mental health concerns over the last sort of 3 years. Obviously, in March, all of our worlds changed significantly, and I think, as we've discussed, when we think about the questions asked by the bid audience and the bid businesses, mental health now is higher on the agenda than it's ever been. So professionally, that's a positive in that we are now starting the conversations that we've been sort of banging on doors for years to say we need to talk more about mental health, but we now need to think how critical is this. So we offer sort of remote consultation services through Work Wellness to companies that are, as I say, locally and national, that enable employees to speak in confidence to an occupational health practitioner. Gives them sort of an hour's space to have not only a clinical assessment of their anxiety and depression levels, but also a one-to-one conversation. How are they coping? So what support are they putting in place to look after themselves? So physical exercise, diet, meditation, yoga, pet therapy. Have you got a pet there to support you? What can we do to work together to make sure that employees who are working have that support sort of externally from their work environment? Because it may be that they don't want to speak to their line manager. Sort of that proactive approach is key to me, and it's something that's really important that we give a personal response, that all of our services are targeted to the business, and it takes us time to make sure that we understand your business if we're working with you. To get it right. We don't have a one-size-fits-all approach through Work Wellness. Our benefit as a smaller business is that we meet with you, you'll meet with one of our direct team to say what is it you actually need, and what can we do to look after your workforce and keep them well. It's an absolute pleasure to be working alongside Solihull Bid and their Emerge Stronger project, which is supporting local businesses to make sure that their guidance and their employees are aware of what's out there to look after them. We've worked previously with Solihull Bid to do mental health first aid training, and we cannot say how highly we value that opportunity to work together and to make sure that as a community in Solihull, we are doing our very best to get everybody through this COVID pandemic safely and securely.
So Fiona, one of the first questions we've had come in from our businesses in Solihull is as follows. Since working from home, I felt more anxious about returning to the workplace, and I'm worried that I won't be able to cope with people around me. Are these feelings normal, and what can they do to make it more workable for them?
So absolutely, I'd say yes, they're normal. So whilst for each of us, normal's different. So there's not one standard sort of level of anxiety or concern across the board for everybody. So for each of us as individuals, we'll experience different levels of anxiety and concern. What's really important to remember is that all of our businesses that we have locally and across sort of the UK are working to COVID secure standards. So there are legal requirements for your business to be made safe by the management team to ensure that when you return to work, that's a safe environment for you. So the need to wear face masks on public transport when you're travelling is obviously there, and we're aware of that. And then when you get to your workplace, we will be making sure that the distancing is in place, that the antibacterial hand wash is available, that there'll be washing facilities. So in terms of the physical environment, very much it's probably safer than potentially it ever was, because we're now got heightened awareness about infection control. Having said that, if you are in the vulnerable category and you've got a reason to think about not returning, please do discuss that with your manager or your line manager in advance. As an occupational health company ourselves, that's something that we can also review. So if anybody has any concerns about their health or have been declared clinically vulnerable at the start of the outbreak and would have received a letter from the government, we are there to support them too. So the option to work from home is still very much out there, but again, that depends on the needs of your business and your role. So yes, in summary, that anxiety is more than understandable. It's sort of recognising that, alerting your manager if it's a health concern, or just sort of talking through with your business and asking in advance of your return, can I see your policy? What have you done to make the workplace secure? Hopefully that's something the business is doing anyway, because we recognise that having that information and communication whilst you're working from home and sending it out to you is invaluable, because that eases that anxiety about going back to the actual physical workplace.
Great. So the big point to take from this then is that people don't need to feel alone. It's actually quite normal to be feeling anxious and these feelings that people are having going back into the workplace.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been following the Mental Health Foundation, particularly they've been doing regular research on sort of the population and what's triggering anxiety. And certainly the return to work plan, when that was suggested sort of a month or so ago, we were looking at 35 to 65% of people were feeling anxious, absolutely just about returning to work. So the thought of sort of stepping out of the door from a safe space and that work from home option, looking at over half of the people surveyed were anxious. So yes, indeed, it's more than recognised and acceptable to feel that way. I think what's really important, and perhaps something we can talk about later, is how we actually recognise that anxiety and how we manage it, and then working together to support employees, either whether they're in the workplace or whether potentially they're facing sort of a challenging situation away from work.
Okay, so the second question that we've had in from one of our businesses today is, both myself and my partner have been made redundant and are looking for work. How can we stay positive when everything seems so negative and bleak out there?
Initially, it's going to hit, that sort of challenge, that shock. And it's like any response to a shock situation, to like a bereavement, really, that's still going to hit us sort of emotionally as a feeling of loss. And that's something that's very challenging to manage. I think particularly in this situation, obviously, the financial stress is going to be overriding because you're both in that situation together. But it's then trying to sort of, once you've got sort of over that initial sort of blow, it's how do I stay strong and trying to stay strong together. That feeling of loss will start to sort of ease, but it's managing it and taking care of you. And we talk a lot about self-care. So how do we keep ourselves strong? And I think when we've lost a job and our routine, it's trying to maintain that, because it's easy to kind of curl up in a ball in the corner and think, that's my protective mechanism. And again, thinking, how do we manage? That keeps us safe. I think of a hedgehog, and he curls up and he keeps himself safe in a little ball there. But we have to try and, as you said, mention that sort of positivity and look for that and try and think of a way forward, which I'm not going to pretend at this time is easy, because for all of us, there are all challenges around where are we going to get the next work from. But could use it as a time to build up new skills. I've spoken to a lot of people when we think about coping strategies for anxiety in general, things like yoga and meditation that, we think about as sort of frontline strategies in the first instance. The big positive through the pandemic has been that online, YouTube and different sort of online resources, There's so many practitioners and people out there now offering us an opportunity from our own homes to take part. So use it as an opportunity to potentially look for new skills. Could you build upon your sort of skill base that you currently have with your role? Is it time for reflection? Actually, the work I was doing before, is that still the area that I want to be in? So if I'm looking for new opportunities, putting a positive slant on, what do I actually like about what I was doing? Is that what I want to proceed with moving forwards? Or could I start to expand my skill base now and use this as an opportunity to look for new things to learn or to explore in terms of career options? But really keeping our own batteries charged. So just as we charge up our phone at the end of the evening, we wake up in the morning, it's beautifully charged, it's refreshed, it's ready to go. If we don't do that for ourselves and keep our own batteries sort of full and ready to move forward, that's when we start to notice effects on our health and depletion of our well-being. So going out for a walk, weather permitting, obviously not probably the time of year to recommend that, but we can still wrap warm. But getting outside, getting some vitamin D when there's only sunlight can be really beneficial to our mood, as well as some COVID studies showing that actually helps immunity too. So getting a routine, making sure that we do still get up at sort of a reasonable hour in the morning and get dressed. Because again, guilty as charged. You get into your dressing gown and your pajamas and stay there for sort of lunchtime. And then our mindset is generally can be more negative than a positive sort of front. Actually, these are the things I'm going to do today. So keeping that routine is really, really important too. So talking, especially if you've got your partner, share how you're feeling if you can with one another, and you can support each other that way by keeping things bottled up. That can exacerbate our anxiety and our sort of feelings of negativity and concern can be sort of enhanced by not having a routine and not sharing our thoughts. Having said that, it's still really important that we take quiet time for ourselves too. The two of you might be at home together, which might be unknown, although with isolation it's been more apparent, but taking time to also do your own activities for you, so you've got something else to talk about together as well. Maintaining your own identity is really important too.
So if people are feeling as though they're doing everything they can and taking all the advice that they can, but still feel as though they're on a downward spiral and things aren't getting any better, is there anything, a trigger maybe they could look for where they know they need to seek medical or professional intervention?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think recognising anxiety in the first instance is really important. So the kind of things that we'd be thinking of would be sort of physical symptoms. We might start to sweat, we might start to have palpitations or feel our heart rate rising. We might feel hot, we might feel cold, we might feel very, very tearful. And all of these feelings will ebb and flow. So day to day, we will feel positive some days, negative others. It's when we're finding that pretty much every day we're waking up, we're not wanting to get out of bed, we just can't face the day. We potentially stop talking, we don't want to converse with the world, we stop engaging with any activities that we do and we enjoy. It's when we're finding that we would say at least 5 out of 7 days, we're just not motivated to move forwards at all. We might become increasingly tearful and just generally feeling down. We'd say as clinical gauge 2 weeks as a minimum. I would say for most people, unless you've previously had a history of depression or anxiety, you won't necessarily pick up on your signs and symptoms after 2 weeks. It could take longer. But 2 weeks is a minimum clinically. Anything over that of having every day where it feels very black and dark, that's when you need to start thinking about seeking help. So your GP would usually be your first port of call if you are in the community. If you are in the workplace, it may be that you do have occupational health services, or you may have an EAP that you can reach out to. But if you're at home and you need resources, GP would be your first call. And again, I appreciate GPs at the moment are tricky to get hold of, but there are still phone options and online consultations through most surgeries. So it's not the case that you won't have an option to speak to somebody. And it's always important to say, I'm feeling low, my mood is quite dark, I do need to seek help, as well as the charities, the Samaritans, Papyrus for younger people, and we'll be able to give you links to those charities through sort of the BID website or through other options through communication routes.
The last question we've had in is somebody who's the head of a small company. Their team is now returning to the workplace, and they're asking what could they do to make sure that they're doing everything for their team in regards to mental health, well-being, and making sure that people aren't going to worry about returning into that office space.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing we would say is having an open communication policy. So as we spoke about earlier with regard to the COVID sort of safety restrictions that you've got in place, just letting people know that that's happening as they return to the workplace from a physical perspective is brilliant. But what's also really important is the mental side. So again, that anxiety. So when they do return, there will be anxiety there. As we've said, for the majority of 50%, that anxiety will remain. So having sort of conversations around mental health, introducing some training around mental health can be really useful as well. So anything from sort of aware half-day sessions just to help people know when and where to start conversations and just feel comfortable about actually saying how you're doing and then knowing how to respond. I think we're all very comfortable when somebody comes in with sort of something physically apparent, so a fractured arm or leg, and everybody gathers around and says, "Oh, how are you doing? What happened?" Whereas if somebody comes in and they might sort of be very tearful or very withdrawn, and that's quite unusual for them, do we then feel confident to approach and say to them, "How are you doing? Do you need any support?" So definitely sort of training around mental health first aid can be really useful. Knowing as well if you have any support routes available. So again, coming back to occupational health EAPs, where can we refer people to, and making sure that that's quite well signposted, either through your intranet sites or if you have notice boards, making sure that it's there. Organisations like Samaritans, NHS, Mind Matters, you can get little cards sent out to you via their websites that you can distribute around your workplace that people can gather up without sort of making it obvious that that's what they're doing if they're not comfortable about having an open conversation. But it's really important that managers do keep in touch with their employees and just regularly touch base and just see if there's anything else they can be doing to support. It's something we were encouraging pre-COVID, and it's obviously sort of raised itself up on the agenda much higher now. So that opportunity to have those conversations is invaluable. It takes 5-10 minutes out of your day with your team, and also being aware through the training, what is it I'm looking for that's different with people, with team members that they may not want to vocalise but will pick up through their non-verbal communication. One of the tools that we use during the training sessions that we deliver are something called the stress bucket or stress container. And we look at somebody's sort of size of their container and what they have flowing into it and how they're coping, what can they use to manage those stresses. That can be a great team activity sort of to work together moving forward, that you can sort of access online readily through the mental health first aid site. And to work together, just again raising that awareness, and it often opens up huge sort of levels of conversation that people share things that they might not ordinarily have done. So it's very much that open communication and that culture that we are there to support you, whether it's a physical illness or issue or a mental illness or issue.
And is there something additional that people can do if they don't feel they want to talk to their employer or to people that they know within the workplace?
I mean, we would always say Samaritans are there 24/7, and certainly we kind of perceive Samaritans just as a crisis service, that they are there to listen, and there is always somebody on the end of a line or on the end of a text now. So that can be a really sort of invaluable service. If somebody wants to speak in confidence to medical professional, if you have routes to occupational health, again, that's a good one to use. But again, GP will also have options to sort of refer you through to what's called IAPT, so it's psychological therapist through the NHS. That will take a little bit longer to access, but it will at least start a process for you to know that there's going to be somebody to talk to at some point in time. But certainly, being aware sort of within your organisation, coming back to your team, of having those sort of charities and signposting available. Somebody again can pick up that from the internet or from your notice boards and see who's local to access as well, to have support routes that way.
Thank you for watching the launch of our Emerge Stronger Solihull campaign. We hope you've really enjoyed it, and we want you to register for the rest of the series, which is coming soon. Thank you.